The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy, Chapter 10. Another 2 weeks passed. Ivan Ilyich no longer got up from the sofa. He didn't want to lie in bed, so he lay on the sofa. And lying there, facing the wall almost all the time, he suffered alone, the same suffering that resolved nothing, and thought alone, the same thought that resolved nothing. What is this? Can it really be true that this is death? And the inner voice answered, yes, it's true. Why this torment? And the voice answered, no reason. It just is. Beyond that, and besides that, there was nothing. From the very start of his illness, from the day Ivan Ilyich first went to the doctor, his life had split into two opposite moods that kept trading places. One was despair and the expectation of an incomprehensible and terrible death. The other was hope and a close, fascinated attention to the workings of his own body. Sometimes all he could see was a kidney or an intestine that had strayed, for the moment, from its duties. Sometimes there was only that incomprehensible, terrible death, from which there was no escape at all. The two moods had taken turns from the beginning of the illness, but the further the illness went, the more doubtful and far-fetched the notions about the kidney became, and the more real the sense of death coming on. He only had to remember what he had been 3 months ago and what he was now, remember how steadily he had been going downhill, and every possibility of hope collapsed. Lying with his face to the back of the sofa, he lived in a loneliness that had no equal anywhere. Loneliness in the middle of a crowded city, among his many acquaintances and his own family, and yet more complete than at the bottom of the sea or deep in the earth. In those final days of that terrible loneliness, Ivan Ilyich lived only in his imagination, in the past. One after another, pictures of his past rose up before him. It always began with what was nearest in time and ran back to what was most distant, to childhood, and rested there. If Ivan Ilyich thought of the stewed prunes he had been offered that day, he remembered the raw, wrinkled French prunes of his childhood, their particular taste, and the rush of saliva when he got down to the pit. And alongside that memory of a taste rose a whole row of memories from those days. His nanny, his brother, the toys. No, not that. Too painful, Ivan Ilyich told himself, and brought himself back to the present. The button on the back of the sofa, and the creases in the leather. Morocco leather is expensive, and it doesn't last. There was a quarrel over it, but it was a different leather and a different quarrel. The time we tore Father's briefcase and were punished, and Mama brought us little pies. And again the memories came to rest on childhood, and again it hurt, and Ivan Ilyich tried to push them away and think of something else. And right alongside that stream of memories, another stream ran through his soul. The memory of how his illness had grown and gathered strength. Here too, the further back he went, the more life there was, more that was good in life, and more of life itself. The two streams flowed together. Just as the torment keeps getting worse and worse, so the whole of life kept getting worse and worse, he thought. One bright point back there at the beginning of life, and after it everything blacker and blacker, faster and faster. Inversely proportional to the square of the distance from death, thought Ivan Ilyich. And this image of a stone falling downward with gathering speed lodged itself in his soul. Life, a series of growing sufferings, flies faster and faster toward its end, the most terrible suffering of all. I'm falling. He shuddered, stirred, wanted to resist. But he already knew that resisting was impossible. And with eyes tired of looking, yet unable not to look at what was in front of them, he stared at the back of the sofa and waited. Waited for that terrible fall, the crash, the destruction. Resisting is impossible, he told himself. But if I could at least understand why, even that is impossible. It could be explained if you could say I hadn't lived as I should have. But that is impossible to admit, he said to himself, remembering all the lawfulness, the correctness, the decency of his life. That much I cannot allow, he told himself, his lips curling into a smile, as if anyone could see that smile and be fooled by it. There is no explanation. Torment, death, why?